Thank you for coming, guys. My name is Bruno. So I'm one of the kidney dietitian working in Nottingham, and also I'm non-medical prescriber. The section for today is to share with you my journey related to advanced clinical practice or advanced clinical practitioner. So the talk is not necessarily addressed to dietitians specifically, but actually to any AHP non-medical professions or nurses as well, or radiographers that want to essentially know more about advanced clinical practice. So it's fair to say that there is up till 2017, the role of advanced clinical practice or advanced clinical practitioners essentially had a lack of standardization nationally, and what you ended up is different hospital, different trust. They used to have different level of funding, but also different scope of practice. With the Health Education England 2017 documents, they actually as clearly define advanced clinical practice as a level of experience rather than a role. And this level of experience, essentially, you need to have a high degree of autonomy, complex decision making. You also have to have level 7 qualification, which I'll explain that a little bit more. So you need to demonstrate that you're working at a master level award. And you also need to demonstrate as well that you have enough evidence and competencies to work across 4 pillars of practice, which again I will define in a little bit more detail. So clinical practice, leadership, management, education and research. In the past, ACP, for example, used to focus a lot on advanced clinical skills, and they used to be and still are national or very expert in their own fields. But ACP from Health Education England clearly defines that actually, if you want to call yourself an advanced clinical practitioner, or if you want to define yourself, I'm working at advanced clinical practice level, you have to have all the 4 competencies. Working autonomously, so making decision by yourself. So here, for example, for therapies or AHP, we always think about how, perhaps maybe a radiographer as well, what can I replace the job with? So, for example, if a consultant or doctor or medic used to do a task, then an advanced care practitioner often replace that. And that's the nursing model that often has happened in the past, which my understanding is for AHP as well, they're following. So advanced clinical practice, then you need to be able to work in partnership, so not just with individual patient, family and carers, but also in partnership with individual within your organization, maybe management, finance, dealing with complaints. So it's not just about your clinical expertise. And it includes analysis and synthesis, complex problem, innovative ways of working, so audit, service evaluation, research is there as well to a different level, but you need to do that to enhance patient experience and improve outcomes. So this is, again, it's not just about doing an audit or a service evaluation, but actually having this deep breadth of knowledge of your service that you deliver, analyze what you're doing, and think about how can you do better. So I wanted to spend a few minutes for this definition because it's very clear. Anybody can call yourself, well, I'm an advanced clinician, I'm an advanced radiographer, advanced dietitian, advanced physiotherapist. But the Health Education England actually stressed, do you actually meet the criteria of the definition of advanced clinical practitioner? So from 2017, there are essentially 2 ways of how you can become an SCP. One way is to complete a master course that's available for a lot of professionals and nurses, which will lead you to the accreditation of becoming an advanced clinical practitioner. You can't just complete the course, just decide tomorrow I'm going to do this course, off you go. You need to speak to your clinical area, you need to speak to your management, you need to speak to, if you work, I don't know, in gastro, you need to speak to the gastro team to see if there is a potential role that you could potentially develop into, and if they've got an appetite for this. So you have to have the support from your line manager as well as your clinician that you're working with. The nice things is that the NHS Health Education England I realized that there are a lot of clinicians in practice that have been doing a CP level for a numbers of years, and that open a what they call IE portfolio route, which is the one that I'm going to share with you today. Which is essentially a process whereby you reflect on your experience, and you can complete significant evidence and then show etc. to Health Education England that you have met the capability, the 30A capability of being advanced clinical practitioner, and Health Education England will issue with a digital badge, so it's an accreditation. It doesn't lead to a new banding, it doesn't lead to a new role, but it means that, yes, that you are working on advanced clinical practitioner level. And this opportunity is open until 2027. It's free for the organization, it's free for the individual. It does require some time, which you will need to agree with your line manager about, and I'll go a little bit more detail. But this is, I apologize, this is not very clear, but it actually translates what's the pathway. This is taken from paramedics, but this is something that is translating out through all HP profession. So you start as a registered clinician, then there's a transition period, you go towards an enhanced practice level, then this transition period may take you to an advanced practice level, and to potentially a consultant practice level. And they also, within paramedics, they also define a different kind of degree in terms of master qualification. So an advanced practice definitely has a 7, so you need to have master level qualification or evidence that you're working at that level. And a consultant practice at the moment is doctoral level, but this is not embedded by Health Education England. This is just an example that I'm working through. What is embedded from Health Education England is advanced practice. I would say better advanced clinical practice. And I think the terminology is very important, I think. So you don't use it interchangeably, advanced practice, advanced clinical practice. So it is advanced clinical practice the Health Education refer to. So what they refer to is you essentially need to have evidence to meet these 4 pillars that you probably all are aware of. So like I said before, your clinical practice, your facilitation of learning. So that's really important. So that means that as part of your advanced clinical practice role or advanced clinical practice experience, you need to create a working environment where you thinking about succession planning, thinking about sharing your knowledge, but also thinking about enhance not just your own knowledge, but the knowledge of others. So some of you might say, Bruno, where are they doing this? We've got students, we've got a lot of initiative within therapies, for example. It's not just about that. It's about how do you directly contribute. So everybody does students, it's part of our job. This is a step forward. So you may need to create a journal club initiative. You may involve with teaching at a local, national, regional level, or within your own hospital as well. But this teaching needs to be at that higher level. Leadership, so that means that you maybe are involved with some management responsibility, and this is perhaps some of the challenges that nurses ACP have encountered, especially when Health Education England came out with this classification saying that it's not up to me to do operational management. This could be translated into taking on PDR, taking on some managerial responsibility, i.e., there is a project or service development within your service that maybe the management team needs support, or maybe you know very well your service, so you may end up leading, and that means leading with finance, leading with a high-level organization, or maybe with your partner, like with the RCS. And then research. So research doesn't mean that you have to have, or you have to do a PhD, or you have to do a randomized trial. It doesn't mean that. It means that it includes audit, service evaluation, project development, maybe be involved with research, maybe collecting data, but you need to demonstrate the service improvement and patient improvement. And the way that I see it is actually at every banding when we start or on every role, you actually are, we had started to develop these skills. So as a band 5, you got a degree, you facilitating the learning of other students. You may also take the leadership perhaps of some tutorial or some students, and you may be involved in collecting audit for data for an audit. And this translates with a band 6, then it becomes a little more specialist, the band 7 enhance, and the 8A advanced. I put the band in there, but that's rightly or wrongly, because be aware, Health Education England does not recommend of banding. It doesn't say advanced care practitioner need to be 8A. It doesn't say for now, because it's always been split between Health Education England has been an advisory body, and it's been always separate by NHS England. But as you know, they merged recently with NHS England, so things may change in the future. This is what it's happening with the allied health professions, and Elaine can share the slides. And I think it's nice in a bit to see the pillars and the different roles. At the same time, I just found it a little bit misleading, because advanced clinical practitioner, it's highlighted completed in green, but actually you don't need to have just your clinical practice. You need to have competencies in all of the 4 pillars of practice. So something that I share with the ladies, I love these slides, but also it's a bit unclear. Otherwise, you just think about, oh, advanced clinical practitioner is the one that has got a lot of experience. So how do you get accreditation with advanced clinical practice? Well, there's a little bit of work to do. So it's a little bit like when you are a student, where you need to essentially compare your practice to a set of competencies. So the first things, I'll come back to this, the first things is to get hands of this document, the multi-professional framework for advanced clinical practice in England, and ever read through it, ever read through the 38 capabilities, and think about, do you think you're working at an advanced practice level, yes or no? And if you think you are, then you need to complete an expression of interest. How do you do that? You go to the Health Education England Advanced Practice website, and at the moment they're actually taking application, and you just express your interest. So there's no obligation there. The form is very straightforward. You read the capability, you think, right, okay, I think I'm at advanced practice level here. So complete the form, and then Health Education England will come back to you and we'll say, yes, you meet our criteria or not. The second stage is once you get a yes, Health Education England will want evidence to say, we discussed that with your line manager, and we discussed that with your clinical, advanced clinical practitioner lead in the trust. And if the answer is yes, then the next step is to complete what we call a learning analysis. So that's the first piece of work that you need to complete. And I'll show you what does that mean very briefly. So it's a self-reflection of yourself, a learning need analysis. And essentially, it's a little bit your CV. Don't worry, it's so long, but it's all pre-filled. So it's a little bit your CV to demonstrate, for example, any training qualification that you may have at a level 7. So if you've done any master modules, or if you've done any courses that are particularly relevant. So then the other bit is a job description. So justify yourself, what you're doing now, a little bit of your CV, what you're doing, like where you work, etc. But the main bit is this one, which I found it really useful. You need to, for each of the 4 pillars, you need to reach each capability and score yourself. So they give you a score between 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for each scale, so I don't know, for instance, you apply knowledge to relevant anatomy, physiology, clinical examination in your specialty. So you need to provide a set of evidence. How does that meet the capability? And also score yourself between 0 to 4. So it's quite detailed, but you can use the same piece of evidence to support different capability. So that would probably take you at least it took me at least 2 days to complete. So you need to have time. So that's the first thing. So the LNA essentially is there to highlight any not weakness, but any things that you may need to do a little bit better. So for example, for me, the research, I score myself to 3 because I never done proper research. I've done audit service evaluation. So yeah, so that's the first piece of work that it requires to do. Once you've done the LNA, so the learning need analysis, then you'll have to you'll be allocated to a university within the United Kingdom, and it doesn't matter. You can be working in London and you can be allocated in Sheffield or vice versa, and this is all done online, where you essentially you have a supervisor that will help you to assess your LNA. Say, yes, Bruno, you're right. Yes, Bruno, no, Bruno, that's wrong. And then to move on to the next step. The next step is the e-portfolio, which I'll go into details in a little bit, followed by a 3,500 word of a clinical narrative. So this is very briefly in a nutshell what is required. This is from the Health Education England website. So in purple are the things that we have to complete. So your first expression of interest, which is very quick. Then the second one is the evidence, which journey you want to do, which will be the e-portfolio journey. And then the third one is the LNA, which will just show you once the LNA is successful, then the e-portfolio starts. So the clock really starts when you start your e-portfolio, and you've got 12 months to complete these. What is the e-portfolio? The e-portfolio is essentially an extension of the LNA, where you really need to show in details your level of competencies. So the LNA is a quick reflection of the capabilities, and it's much shorter. While the e-portfolio, it takes a bit of time to complete that. So again, I want to show you, because it makes much more sense, I think, if you see what the portfolio looks like. So just concentrate on the left-hand side. So you have things like, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Thanks. So it has some straightforward details of your qualification, your career, your achievements, some other learnings. But the main things that you have to do is the collection of evidence. So you have some mandatory evidence that you have to complete. So for example, you have a minimum of 2 case studies that you have to write. And this case study, they need to be, you can select them, but they need to be written at a level 7, so at a master level. What does that mean? You need to use academic writing. It needs to be backed up by evidence. So you need to look at references. So it needs to be written in a certain way. And these need to be a minimum of 800 words each. Then you have to do 2 reflections, again, a minimum of 800 words each. You have a choice. So I did mine on leadership and mine on research, but your choice is between leadership, research, or education. And you need to, again, critically review the evidence and write them a level 7. A master level. So for instance, for me, I've done my reflection on when I was a manager, the transition between management and leadership, and then I decided to focus on resilience because it's something that I was affected directly, and I wanted to critically appraise that and reflect. And use example of how in your practice do you work at an advanced level in terms of, for example, leadership or research. And then you need to have some other, so all the E that you see there is essential evidence. So feedbacks from colleagues, from patients, feedback, for example, of risk assessment, business cases, other colleagues of mine, they've done in the route. So I've got some physio friends and nurse friends that are on the route as well. They've done managing complaint, disciplinary, but anything can count really. they want evidence of be able to publish, be able to critically review the evidence, etc. So I'm not going to bother you too much with my portfolio, with what I did, but that's essentially, you need to have evidence for their capability, and you need to match that to the 4 capability, and that's done automatically for you. So at the end, you've got the 4 capabilities linked to all the evidence that is required. And once they will assess you, they'll be able to look at all your evidence that's supporting your statement. So it's a little bit like becoming a student again, when to showcase what essentially you, how do you meet all the 38 capabilities. So to cut the story short, there are 5 things that essentially you have to do. You have to complete a special of interest that takes minutes. You have also have to, sorry, you have to submit your choice. So the choice is usually the court. I think you're now in court number 4, 4, 5, or 6. So the 4, I think, will start in January, and then the 5th, I think, will start later on next year. And you need to do the learning need analysis. So that's very much self-direct. You do it by yourself. After you did a self-learn analysis, then your clock starts, your 12-month starts, and you have to complete your portfolio of evidence. And the final is a critical reflection. So this is a 3,500 words of essentially of how you combine that together. So for instance, you say, I don't know, ACP roles have increased significantly due to the level of high pressure within the NHS. Then you have to reference these. Then I said in mine, well, HP historically has been nurses, but HP and have actually grown as a role on SCP, and you find your reference. And this is why I believe I'm working at advanced practice level, because, and you continue. So it's a bit funny, because you have to write in the first sentence. They suggest you write in the first sentence as well, but you evidence this level of practice. So where I'm at the moment, I'm just finished the critical reflection. I've got a few meetings at the end of the month, ready to submit everything before Christmas. I started in April this year, so I had to finish a bit quicker because I wanted to, but actually you've got 12 months to do that, so don't do things in a rush. I just had to do it because I've got other deadline coming up from January, so I wanted to get out of the way. And that's in a nutshell. So essentially, what is the portfolio? It's a self-reflection of your practice, but you can prove and you show that you work at advanced level. And you may think yourself, well, I am. Well, if you are, then speak to your line manager, speak to your clinical practice to see, to your specialty, to see if you are eligible to start that. Personally, I did majority in my own time, but I didn't ask, so I didn't. So it was completely my fault. So as part of the portfolio, they do say that you have to liaise with your line manager, because when you do the LNA, they may highlight that you need a specific module that you have to undertake, and you'll have to have the support from your line manager. So I was lucky I didn't need to do anything, because I've done a master before, but it wasn't a master of advanced practice. It wasn't a master of advanced clinical practice. It was a different master, although some of the skills do count as transferable. So remember, this is not, it's not going to lead you to a new job necessarily. I decided to do it because I thought I am at the level of practice, and so far I think I'm doing okay. Obviously, I will not know the outcomes until everything gets submitted, and then you have to wait 2 months after submission for the outcomes. And if it's obviously, if there's yes, you get this badge and you'll be accredited. But if it is a no, I don't know, because I haven't been there. So, but I'll let you know either way, probably by the end of January or February time. So these are some of the links that you're more than welcome to be fair, there's a lot of information on the website, which is quite clear. It will close the portfolio. They're planning for 2027. So if you know clinicians that have been on the roll, then it's an investment. It's a well investment to to get at least, you don't get a qualification or you get an accreditation. And that's it. So I think, yeah, I told you these things. It's free, it's a good opportunity. It matches your PDR as well. And if you are working to, so predominantly maybe addressed to band 7 or band 8A, so if you're working towards an advanced practice level at a band 7, you may want to consider inquiring, is there a degree of expectation for band 8A? I don't know, that's a question that each one of you probably will need to ask yourself and perhaps your line manager. Have you got any question you would like to ask? Oh, this is something for Barack Obama. I really like. The change will not come if you wait somebody for some. Essentially, if you want to have something to change, you have to be the first person to try to push. Don't wait and sit for others to present you with the change for you to take. So I think that concludes my talk. Laura, yes.
Sorry, Bruno. I just it's probably a devil's advocate question, but if there is no linkage to banding or other jobs or things like that, then what? Then no. And so you're doing it really for your own personal development and things like that, aren't you? Or to be recognised. So why do you need to have the department that you're working in, as in like non-therapies, other department, exploring where that will take you and if it's allowed, if it doesn't actually relate to any jobs that you might get? Do you know what I mean? So like
I do, yeah. So I said that because initially before I did that, I contacted James Pratt. So he's the lead for ACP in the trust, mainly for nurses, I have to admit, but he's the lead for advanced clinical practice. And he said to me, Bruno, so first of all, it's not about banding. You can be an experienced band 6, band 7, band 8, but it's about your level of practice. And secondly, he said, well, and I explained my situation. At that time, I said, well, I'm a band 7 and I want to become an ACP, and will that lead me to an 8A? And he would say, no, in order to do this, you'll have to speak to your own specialties. So in my opinion, obviously now I've gone at it, so that's different, Michael. But in my opinion, that's what I did at that point. And I went to my specialty when I was a band 7, and I did start to have this conversation and say, is there any chance that we could create an ACP in Bruno, or any release of funding? So you start those conversations. So what I'm trying to say, no, you don't have to have their permission. You're right, Laura. If you want to do it, you do. But it does make sense for me anyway. It did make sense to speak to them earlier, to say, look, there's this opportunity. I am working at this level. I'm going to have this classification. We could review opportunities that arise within the service. So I think it's good to let them aware. I don't necessarily need their permission. You're right, but it could lead to something good.
Yeah. So it's more about just maintaining communication so that they know what your aspirations might be rather than anything else.
Yeah, and well, the other things is when you write your evidence in your portfolio, the evidence needs to be cross-checked, and they usually like to have consultant or nurses or pharmacy at a high level to cross-check the references. So yeah, but you don't have to have their permission, although I think if you work together, that does help.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? I don't know how many ACP do we have within HP or therapy already in post. I don't know, maybe Tracy, you know.
So obviously that's the piece of work that Amy Pattenden is doing, Bruno, at the moment, to understand the current kind of status of people undertaking advanced practice roles within our AHP workforce. So I don't think I'd want to hazard a guess at the moment, but that is definitely the piece of work that's been undertaken, Bruno. In terms of people who've gone through the e-portfolio route, there's at least 5 that I'm aware of. And I've just popped in the chat that I did ask people just to let us know that they're expressing an interest, because as you said, Bruno, it's not mandated, it's not essential, you know, so it's just from our kind of interest perspective, who's interested in going down the route of accrediting their practice at this point in time. But I think, you know, we have a lot of people who are undertaking advanced roles within their AHP professions here at NUH, but I don't know the actual numbers, but Amy's project will tell us much more about that in the non too distant future. So
thanks, Tracy. I suspect this is the thing that some people may call themselves an advanced clinical practitioner, and the portfolio or advanced clinical practice team, they're actually very, not pedantic, but very picky, and they say, do you actually meet, if you call yourself like that, do you actually meet the 4?
So again, that's Amy's looking at job titles
Good.
As well to go alongside that. And her project, I think she's doing an update to AHP board in December as to what she's found out so far. And
fantastic.
And sort of watch this space for more news, I suppose. But well done for completing it, Bruno, and thank you for sharing your experience of going through it. It's really interesting to hear what you actually have to do. It's
a bit of work, but I think it's more if people want, even outside dietetics and inside dietetics, if people want to find out more, drop me an email. I'm more than happy to talk you through it if needed.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good day, Bruno, and bye everybody. Thank you for presenting today, Bruno. It's really appreciated. Bye.